Hey there, horror movie tea sippers.
The following podcast episode will contain spoilers for the movie we are about to review. If you have not seen the movie and do not wish to have anything ruined prematurely, please do not continue to watch or listen until you have seen the movie.
And welcome to the Horror Movie Tea Podcast. Today we are covering Freaks, which came out in 2018, and it had been requested by Carrie, but then I realized that I think we accidentally watched the wrong movie.
We made an oopsie poopsie?
Because I'm pretty sure it was Freaks from 1932 that she had requested, because I remember her, giving some context around the movie.
It had been a while since we had seen those comments and context.
Yeah, so we literally didn't think about it until I was searching for the summary in IMDb, and I was like, uh-oh, there's two movies. Oopsie poopsie.
When I had searched the movie Freaks, this is the one that popped up.
Which makes sense, because it's a more recent film. They would assume we want the more recent film.
I didn't think anything of it, but with most of Carrie's requests, it does make more sense that it would have been
the other one.
The other one. Sorry
about that, Carrie. So, kind of requested by Carrie, but also oopsie poopsie by us. So,
we will hold on to your other one, though.
It's kind of funny how, it still kind of fit the type of movies that we cover. So, I mean, it's definitely one of those that's right on the edge
horror adjacent.
Yeah, it's more of a thriller, suspense, sci-fi type
action-y kind of.
But there's still horror-ish elements, psychological stuff.
We didn't think anything of it until later. I'm sorry.
Oops, sorry. But before we go into the review, let's grab our cups and talk about tea. So, I'm sorry, we're being boring. We are repeating the tea. I'm using the Please Don't Kill Me mug from our Teespring. And I am drinking the Plum Deluxe Portland Roast City Chai. It's got black tea, rooibos tea, Oregon rose petals, cardamom, ginger, cinnamon, lemongrass, blackberry, and almond essence. And it does have almond milk as the base instead of water, and it's delicious.
And I am drinking Bigelow's chamomile, vanilla, and honey herbal tea. It's got chamomile, natural vanilla, and honey flavors with other natural flavors, and licorice root. And I needed something very calming because this movie got me all in my feels. All in the protective feels. Okay.
But thank you so much, Plum Deluxe, for allowing us to continue to do what we love. And for our tea sippers, brew yourself a cup of tea, sit back, relax, and we hope you enjoy the review. So, the summary of Freaks from 2018. So it kind of starts off making you believe that the father might be a little crazy because the daughter, who is 7, is trapped inside the house and isn't allowed to go outside because she's being told it's dangerous. And then she comes to find out, once she goes outside, that everything appears to be okay, but actually it's not. It's they
play around with it.
Yeah, it's almost like they're prejudiced against these people that have powers, and they're capturing them and more often than not killing them.
It seems like a dark version of mutants. Like X-Men?
Yeah.
A little bit. But not in that universe.
Nope.
So.
Yeah, it did kind of feel like not feel like an X-Men movie, but it definitely skirts around the same premise-ish.
It's Magneto's worst fears.
Yes. But for entertainment, I would give this a 6.75. I could not manage to rate this a 7. Because it's one of those things where it's the trailer in this scenario would have probably helped me like the movie a little more. But it's it's so hit or miss. Because sometimes trailers completely ruined, because I forgot which movie it was, but you had watched a trailer for one and it had completely ruined your experience of the movie.
There's been several.
Yeah, because it's like you're just expecting something else.
Yeah, there's been several like that, to the point where lately I will not watch trailers. I will actively avoid the trailers. I had seen this trailer, because, I mean, this came out a few years ago. So at the time, I was still watching trailers on occasion. And I had seen this trailer, so I knew kind of what to expect.
So this is one of the movies where the trailer would probably help you get a better idea, or at least reading the summary. But because it's like, it starts off really focusing on the father and the crazy things that he's saying, and then whenever you look outside, everything looks so normal. And for me, the twist of them actually being in danger, I feel like the fact that they gave them powers and stuff, it just didn't hit the satisfactory mark for me. Like, if you're going to make it dangerous, maybe have it... This is just me tossing an idea out there just as a variant, but not... I'm not saying that this is a better idea at all. But it's like, what if everything looked normal, but it's actually like aliens or something, and they are trying to like take over people's bodies, or I don't know. It just the fact that they had powers, and the quote unquote twist was unsatisfactory. So I thought it would have been a little bit more cool for them to play around more with the psychological aspect of the dad actually being crazy and the daughter trying to, you know, either convince him that everything's okay, or her trying to find normalcy, or what have you. Huh.
What if the dad thought, or was acting out as if he had severe paranoid schizophrenia and agoraphobia somewhat, but he was actually like a medium or psychic and was seeing spirits and things and believing that those were the voices or the bad people trying to hurt him? Because that would kind of play into now the daughter starting to see ghosts and things in the closet.
Yeah.
That would have been interesting too.
Yeah, like, I know with as much as they fleshed out the powers and stuff, it was interesting. It made it sound like they had thought about the powers first and then done the story the way, but the way they portrayed it in the movie, at least to me, it felt like they focused more on the psychological, and then the powers was an afterthought. And for me, it just made it seem like the movie lost its interest and genuinity, and I don't know, it just lost me quickly after that.
This movie to me felt kind of like a prequel, but one that needed its own prequel, kind of, because they talk about like Dallas being destroyed, and all.
Yeah, like, so they just gave you little things of information, and
I got more questions than I got answers in this movie.
Yeah, I agree. And then the girl was frustrating because she seemed way too naive. Like, I understand she had been locked away for
7 years.
Yeah. So she had been locked up for a while, but the fact that her dad repeatedly told her how dangerous it was out there, at least in my mind, I'd be like, yeah, she would have the curiosity to want to go out there, but she would still be super cautious because all she had been told her whole life was how dangerous it was. Like, her immediately trusting everyone, just... I mean, it wasn't like she was immediately trusting. It should be, like, slightly cautious, like with the ice cream, her grandpa. It's like
she's... McStalkerson.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, she was slightly cautious, but then she's like, this is fine, I'll just go in his truck, everything will be fine. And then just, yeah.
Yes. Why don't I just go ahead and step into your rapey Chester molester van?
Yeah. So, and then...
This movie gave me so much anxiety.
And then maybe this is just my opinion, but I mean it is. But I just thought it was so
This whole
stupid.
podcast is just our opinion.
This is fair. No, all of everything we say is a fact. But I don't know if you thought of this too, but the fact that like the husband found out that his wife quote unquote died, and then he immediately goes to hiding, and the grandpa's like, "Well, I was trying to find you, but you locked yourself away," and he locked himself away for 7 years. Like, that's just so stupid.
Well, I mean, technically speaking, he actually only locked them up for a few months.
Yes, but it was the time thing. Like,
Yeah.
okay. From your understanding, was it inside the house that time was moving normally and the whole world outside was moving slowly? Or was it reversed where they were moving super quickly and the world around them was moving normally?
It's hard to tell. It's really hard to tell. They're extremely vague about that. It would make a bit more sense to me personally and energy-wise, just thinking about it, if he created a bubble in which they moved faster. So the rest of the world seemed like they had stopped or moved extremely slow.
Yeah, that'd take up way less energy
Than trying to slow down the entire rest of the world.
Yeah, the entire world.
Yeah.
Like,
that doesn't make sense.
yeah. In a way that'd make him like more powerful than his daughter.
One of the most powerful, yeah.
Yeah. That'd be a lot.
Especially for how long he kept it up.
And it's like, where would you get all of that energy?
Exactly.
Because it didn't seem like they're
Yep.
eating that well. I mean, they're eating, of course, but
Yeah,
they were
but-
in hiding. Like, they were eating what they could get, so
Yeah.
they weren't probably getting nutritionally complete meals.
He got a lot of canned goods, which isn't bad. Not at all. You can have a varied diet with canned goods.
I feel like canned goods, there's a limit. Well, I guess, no, fruits, vegetables, and then
They have a lot of fruits
protein.
and vegetables, protein.
Could probably get soup.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And they were eating cereals and all too for fiber, so, you know, yeah. We still got a lot of questions.
But yeah, it's just a lot of things in this movie I was just like not on board with at all. And maybe it's just not my type of movie. Maybe there's something I'm missing and some people love this movie. But for me, meh. I could have gone without watching it.
Yeah. I feel like if you're pregnant, especially with a girl, this is probably not a movie that we should be watching,
Which we haven't
which I
told.
currently am.
Yeah.
So I had my hormones sent into overdrive and protective instincts and urges set into overdrive and was a giant ball of anxiety watching the entire movie because of the little girl and the conditions that she was living in and what all was going on and what was happening to her and the situations that she was in and put herself in. And just the whole movie, I was just... There's a reason I chose chamomile tea. for
Which,
this one.
well, okay, I'll change that to realism. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot in the realism that we'll get to for sure. Again, this movie gave me a lot more questions than it answered. I feel like the story itself, while interesting, and the world itself was interesting, I feel like it's a little thin or flimsy, and there's some holes here and there, and I feel like it's not as fleshed out as it should have been. Like I said, this movie feels like a prequel that needed its own prequel, basically.
Yeah.
So
I get like it's hard to get into the world when they give you so
It is.
little information.
yes. I do like that they tried to have a little bit of play, psychological play of, is he suffering from some kind of severe mental illness, which probably wasn't even portrayed very well if it was. Or is it like, is there a very clear and actual real danger that he's trying to protect his daughter from? Is that really his daughter? Or has he kidnapped her and hidden her away? Because she was living in an attic, and that was another thing that gave me such severe anxiety for her.
I'd love to live in an attic. It looked pretty clean for the most part. Just the attic in particular, not the rest of the house.
No. And just the interactions between the different characters were varied, but I feel like on the whole they were pretty consistently realistic for what they were doing. I feel like they could have gone a different way with it and made it a little bit of a stronger story, but again, we'll get to a lot of that in the realism. But it was mostly just this little girl is in bad conditions or in danger like the entire movie, and I didn't appreciate it just in the current state that I find myself. Otherwise, I probably would have enjoyed the movie a little bit more. Again, the powers themselves were kind of interesting, but it just seemed like not as strong of a story as it could have been.
Yeah, it felt like they're just throwing stuff at you and you just had to accept it.
A little bit.
So for realism, because they throw a lot of things at you, and there were like some legitimately unrealistic things, I'm going to give it a 2, which I feel like is pretty reasonable for this one. Well, first of all, the agent, I don't know if she's like FBI or what she was, but
No, they were a different subdivision. I forget what they called it though.
okay. Whenever she's like talking to the dad and she like catches him on his bluff, she was like, I can smell the hydrogen peroxide on you. Hydrogen peroxide does not have an odor. Like, not even sniffing it from the...
It
like,
has a little bit of one, but it's not very strong at all.
well, it's one of those things where it's like, if you like get a whiff of it from the bottle, then yes. But once you apply it, it's like first... like, once you apply it, there's really no scent to smell. And even if that was the case, it's a lot like alcohol where it evaporates pretty quickly. And so even if he just wet his face, it would have been evaporated well before he even got to the door. So I'm calling BS on that. Also, it was really frustrating. Like, first they didn't explain why they got like bloody eyes and stuff whenever they use their powers.
Yeah, there was no explanation there. Are they hemorrhaging every time they use their powers?
Which seems like a bad thing. It seems like they would have a very short lifespan. If
extremely.
Yeah. And then second, they were very inconsistent in what triggered the blood.
Yes.
Because on the one hand, she'd use her powers a little bit and then she'd bleed. And then at one point, she did use more of her powers and then she coughed up blood. But then at the very end where she's using a lot of power, she really didn't have much repercussion.
Yeah.
And that just seems a little weird when the dad... he didn't even use... well, I guess he was technically using his powers because he is inside the house. But it's like, he just had blood once in a while. It was very inconsistent. Yeah. And they didn't explain why it happened. And you just had to accept it. So that was a bit frustrating. And then also, I understand that they had been in the house for 7 years. And maybe he, quote unquote, 7 years because of the time thing.
Dilation.
Well, first, have disputes on him being able to...
we both had big issues with the time dilation thing.
Yeah, like, they made it seem like he slowed down the entire world, which that's a lot of energy. It seemed like it would be more energy efficient to do the opposite, where time was sped up. Mm-hmm. We're inside the house.
Which I think was actually what happened, but even that would have taken a lot of energy because he's still living those 7 years in that time dilation bubble.
Yeah, and he was talking about like trying not to sleep. And I know the grandpa was like, there's no way you didn't sleep, which I agree with. But it just, that was a bit of a weird, but a part of that is I understand that because of that, the house was probably older than the other houses around it, but it seems super dilapidated for it only being 7 years. It's like, I know he's hiding there, so he doesn't really care much about upkeeping it, but it seemed really run down compared to the other houses.
And the house itself was already abandoned. That's why they chose it.
Yeah, but it's like the fact that all of the other houses look pretty new.
Mm-hmm.
Even if the house had been abandoned, you would assume it would be by the same builder.
How many times would he have had to have mowed the lawn?
I don't know.
That's a lot of mowing the lawn. Or does he place it like strictly around like the porch in the
Yeah,
house entrance?
I don't know. Because, like, whenever the neighbors came up to the door, whenever the neighbors came up to the door, even if he had the time thing, like, right at the door, you would think they would be impacted. Or them going, if they went through the time thing, you would think they would be like, oh, something weird is going on.
Yeah.
Like, you would think they would notice something. There's just a lot of inconsistencies with the movie,
yeah.
and I'm not buying it. And then the whole like relationship between the dad and the daughter, it was just like she's obviously was getting old enough where she was kind of hitting a more like independent phase.
Yeah, and starting to question things.
Which is reasonable and accurate for a kid about that age, whenever he's just telling her things and she's not really getting the answer she's looking for.
Well, he keeps telling her like they're bad people and all, but she's not seeing the evidence of it at all.
Yeah.
She's just seeing her dad stressed out.
Yeah.
But when she does catch glimpses of the outside world, everything seems happy and fine.
And ironically, it looks way happier than it is on the inside.
Yes.
Yeah.
And healthier.
Yeah, and then, but I can see it realistic about, a group of people having prejudice against them.
And being hunted.
Yeah, especially if people convince themselves that these people are dangerous. There have been certain times in history where similar things have happened. We will not.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
We're not going into that right now.
Nope. But so because of that, though, because of historical events, it does make this very plausible. But it's just the whole powers thing, the whole how they did the movie, how the dad's powers worked, how the blood worked, just so many inconsistencies. So that's all I got.
Yeah, and they didn't give us any answers to those. They didn't flesh it out.
Nope.
Nothing. We are given little bits and pieces here and there and are meant to just go with it.
Yeah, which there are some movies that do that, but I feel like this one did it really poorly.
Yeah, they didn't do it that well. We don't want to be spoon-fed everything for the movie.
But at least make it inferred.
But yeah.
Like, even if they had, like, an article in the background that explained, like, why the blood happened.
Yeah.
Or, like, something that's, like, if you really want to know and you dissected the movie, you'd be able to find the answers. Yeah. But we literally have no information.
Yeah. They didn't give us enough of those pieces that they threw at us at a random and rapid pace. So, I personally give it a 2.5. Just for a lot of the fighting scenes and effects, like taking into account their powers. I could see some of those things happening, so I gave it just a little bit of a bump.
I do think the UV to check them, that was kind of cool.
That was cool, yes, for sure. But the rest of it seemed kind of off, and the biggest issue I have for sure, apart from just the conditions that she was in, is the time dilation thing. I have so many questions about that. It's so inconsistent, and it just doesn't make sense. He would have needed more rest than he got.
And
There's
also,
no way.
Like, the daughter seemed to almost kind of need to concentrate a little bit.
Yeah.
And for him and his powers, he would have to really concentrate to keep that up, I feel like.
I mean, he was older. He had probably been using the powers quite a bit and knew how to use them well and efficiently. So I get him being more in control of them, but that's still a huge stretch. Creating a bubble and living in it for 7 years while slowing or having the outside world just go on for a few months. That doesn't make that much sense at all. No. I also found it interesting that you need to lie to be normal. Super healthy line, Dad. Thanks.
Yeah.
It makes a bit more sense later when you find out what's actually going on, but it just seemed extremely unhealthy and not like someone in his right mind would say to their child.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, later it does make sense that he is trying to protect her.
Yeah.
But yeah, but don't they say that the easiest lies are the ones that are based in truth?
Yes.
And he had her go off the wall with what he was saying.
Yeah, way out there.
As like for
She
a little
didn't know
girl,
what baseball was.
for a little girl, I feel like it would be easier for him to give her lies that were based in truth.
Yeah, she knew the bare basics of most of the things that he had her recite over and over. So if they asked her detailed questions about a lot of those things, there's no way she would have been able to answer them, and she would have been screwed.
I mean, he did talk her through like what to say if they did ask a more detailed question. He's like, make stuff up. But
yeah,
it
but
was
that'll
still...
only get you so far.
Yeah.
And will honestly is more likely to get you caught in the lie, depending on what she makes up.
Yeah.
So, no. He didn't do a very good job there. The house environment that she was in, they depicted a dilapidated house very well, but I feel like there would have been some serious concerns about mold and things that he was not taking care of. He was not looking after the house itself and taking care of it for the well-being of his daughter. If you're in there for 7 years and you're in the house the vast majority of that time, why would you not keep up with the cleaning and maintenance of said house?
Yeah.
I feel like the more dilapidated it looks, the more other people are going to notice. And if nothing else, possibly report him for suspicious activity. And if they knew he had a child in there, probably CPS. So that draws a lot more attention.
And especially since another thing that doesn't make sense is how locked up he has a house in.
Yes.
House up, and how none of the neighbors find that suspicious or have called. It's like, hey, this person has, you know, their windows blocked up and all of that. It's like, that would be way more suspicious.
Exactly. And in that kind of neighborhood, they might not have had one, but it looked like the kind of neighborhood that would have an HOA. Which most HOAs have stipulations and rules against blocking out windows and things with like newspaper and stuff, which they did, and plastic, because it just looks bad. Like big red flags everywhere. So he might have found a house by luck that was abandoned for one, and two didn't have an HOA. But if the house was abandoned, then most of the people in the area would have known. And if it wasn't abandoned, it was just, you know, not selling, then the people that are trying to sell it would still go by on a regular basis just to upkeep the place and check and make sure that no one had broken in and were squatting in it like they were. So the whole thing just kind of falls apart a little bit. The girl, I can see wanting or being very, very curious and not being as cautious because she is being told these things, but she's not seeing any of the evidence. He's not really having her watch the TV or listen to any of the things or going into detailed explanations of why it's so dangerous. So I can see her not being as cautious and especially trusting like other kids and all, especially when she's being told she's going to live with that family in particular at some point. She already kind of trusts them because she feels like she knows them. But the ice cream man? Creepy McStalkerson? No. Stranger danger. She just gets right into the van with very little hesitation. And then he drives off with her in the van. And she's like, this is fine. This is okay. That ice cream was super melty.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't even look right. It was melting everywhere. And I'm sorry, she's 7. That ice cream would have been all over her face. That was also, I believe, like the first time she had actually had ice cream. I'm surprised she had even heard of it before. But it would have been everywhere. There was some on the door. You could see little drops and things on the door. But it wasn't on her face. It wasn't really on her hands. I'm calling bull.
You know, one thing I just thought of that doesn't make sense is at the end of the movie, whenever she's helping her mom, she can't teleport there. She's using one of the guards or whatever. but yet she's able to show herself at the neighbor's house. That was kind of weird.
So, how I viewed it is she connects mentally to the subject. So, her mom, the neighbor kid, whoever, and she projects herself like they're seeing her in their mind, just as she's seeing them.
But it's like with her mom, though, maybe it's because she's too far away, but it's like she saw the soldier and she was just like, Chloe? And then she figured out it was the daughter.
Well, she's in their mind, so she's able to see what they're seeing.
Yeah. Oh,
that's
true.
Kind of how I got it, but it is a stretch. And again, they're extremely vague on the powers and how they work and all, and what's actually happening. So a lot of this is just speculation and guesswork. I also don't understand how the dad never got her any other clothes. She wore the same onesie as a shirt the entire time. No. Basic hygiene. No.
Yeah, it's like I understand that them surviving is obviously super important, but it's like I feel like the dad has that fairly down pat, and so he should think about other needs on survival and health and hygiene. Like all of that stuff is very important.
Basic stuff too.
Yeah.
Like food is not the only important thing.
Yeah, because it's like, you know, staying away from people that can kill you is one thing, but there's other things that can kill you too that don't have to do with it.
If you can take the time to pick up paper and crayons for her, you can take the time to pick up an outfit or two. Just saying. Instead of having her wear a baby's onesie the whole time.
Which I wish they would have shown what he was like when he was going out. Like how he, like if he just went to a normal grocery store and gave them cash, or how exactly he did that.
They made it seem as if he was taking it. Like he made his own little bubble around himself while he was out. Stole the stuff and left. I also find it interesting he was telling the grandfather that he doesn't kill anymore. He doesn't take lives anymore. When we had seen, in a different scene, him coming home covered in blood and being like, most of it's not mine. Most of it's theirs.
Unless if he just like hurt them or disabled them or something. But yeah.
Okay, but if he left them alive, then they'd be looking harder for him.
That's true. Yeah, I wish they would have given more explanation on what happened with that, because that was just really random and nothing. It didn't take it anywhere. It just,
a lot of it just didn't make sense.
It just gave him an excuse to like have to fall asleep and for her to leave the house.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it didn't seem like him being hurt would give her motivation to want to leave at that point, because she's like, oh.
Yeah, there's some real tangible evidence.
Exactly.
Of what he's saying is actually happening. Like, there's actual danger out there. He's really hurt.
Yeah.
So, I also don't understand why they described the mountain as a place where they would hold them briefly and then kill them. Like, I guess they were trying to study them or something. But why, if her mom was so dangerous, why would they have kept her alive that long? Even the months that they had her.
Maybe it was because she couldn't use her powers while she was on the inside. Like, they knew her weakness, maybe? But
maybe? But I still feel like, I think they said it was like 4 months. I feel like that was still a long time.
Yeah.
Like, after a certain amount of time, probably a month, maybe 2, that if they're going to talk, they're going to talk. She was clearly not talking.
Yeah.
So it just didn't make sense. Most of the movie did make sense, though, so, whatever.
Yeah.
That's what I got.
Yeah. So, like, overall, this movie is kind of a cluster.
Yeah.
It felt like it wasn't sure what it wanted. Like, it had an intent, but the execution was terrible.
Yeah.
And I feel like just kind of changing the story would make it a lot better of a movie.
Yeah, they didn't describe really why Dallas was destroyed. They said it was because of like the newer generation of what they called freaks, but they didn't explain what happened, what were the circumstances leading up to it, the situation itself, nothing. So they were just being hunted, and there was some kind of attack, and Dallas was destroyed.
Yeah.
So they were extremely vague on that. I feel like the story was just not solid. It was more confusing than anything.
I also feel like since these are people that it's in their genetics, that, I mean, we don't know all of the powers that are possible, but I almost would imagine that if we lived in a world like that, it'd be closer to like gun ownership, where there's like certain regulations you have to follow. Like, oh, you can't use your powers within this, amount of time or distance within a city or something along those lines to try and keep cities safe. Like, that would seem a little bit more reasonable than, oh, we're gonna hunt them down and kill them.
Yeah. And again, if these are genetic things, then, I mean, clearly they've been around for a while. If the grandfather is able to disappear at will,
yeah.
So why is it just now being an issue?
Yeah, like it did seem pretty new that they started like hunting them down.
Yeah. So the whole thing is, again, just confusing, and they don't answer very much at all.
Yep. Yeah, so... But maybe we'll cover the 1932 freaks.
Yeah.
Later down the line. One day.
Oops.
One day. Sorry about that.
That was our bad.
But thank you so much for joining us today, and we would love to hear your thoughts on this movie. If you would like to recommend a movie, game, or tea and keep up to date with our content, you can find us on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Discord, and most places you listen to podcasts.
If you'd like to support the podcast, please subscribe, like, and share our content. If you'd like to support us monetarily, we do have our Teespring with our lovely merch available. And our PayPal, or we have our affiliate link with Plum Deluxe as well, of course. It does not affect the price of the tea at all. It just allows us to continue to do what we love. And in the meantime, guys, all of the sites will be linked below. And until the next time, guys, stay safe and stay spoopy. Bye!